Section 3, Subsection 3, Water. Water can be a more difficult issue to address than housing, depending on your location. Yet, as housing's complications mostly stem from the system's control imposed upon it, water is more of a problem due to our environment and what we have been doing to it. From the numerous toxins we dump into our environment without realizing they will make their way into our drinking water, to the poisons that are intentionally added to our drinking water in order to purify and supplement it. It is difficult these days to find water you can trust to drink. I again have been spoiled to have been raised in the Pacific Northwest, where we have an abundance of clean, fresh water. Not only does it rain or snow regularly, replenishing our rivers and streams, but our rugged terrain gathers the water in numerous lakes and reservoirs. This slowly seeps the precious fluid into our ground table throughout the entire year. On top of that, our environment has remained healthy enough that I often drink the water straight from mountain streams and waterfalls without any purification. Though this is not recommended even in my area, I am familiar with most of the potential hazards to the purity of our waters and must enjoy a privilege few in this world can experience with confidence. Not only does this mean we often have a higher quality water provided by our local government, but we also have numerous other options to become sustainable. I guess the easiest way to explain the options I am aware of for reducing your dependence on the monetary system for water is by explaining the plans for the development of my property. As I am starting with raw land, there are numerous options available to me. Yet, to remain legit and as legal as necessary to satisfy the system, I intend to first put in city water with my first structures. Then, upon moving onto the land, I already have a 200-gallon reservoir and two 50-gallon water drums that I can put in the back of my pickup truck. Near the property is a freshwater spring that I can fill the pair of 50-gallon drums in less than half an hour and then haul to my property and dump it into the 200-gallon reservoir. This will give me near free drinking water that is a much higher quality than most, if not any, city water. At this time, I would only use city water for dishes, laundry, and other non-consuming needs. Then, shortly after establishing my home, I will be able to drill a seep well that will pump water into a larger reservoir, at which time I will be able to turn off the city water and simply have the connection available for emergencies, thus using the system to my advantage rather than depending on the system for my survival. Now, not everyone has access to fresh drinking water, though I was told about a website called findaspring.org by a fellow spring visitor who said they use it all over the country. Also, not all land is suitable for digging a well. Unfortunately, most other sources of fresh water, and sadly even some of these sources, will require filtering before it is safe for human consumption. The simplest filter you could use would be a cloth or fine mesh screen used to remove any macroscopic material. If your water needs filtering, this likely will not be sufficient, but depending on how contaminated your water is, you may want to start with this step anyways. The next step would be to send the water through some form of medium, such as fine gravel or sand. However, the most common and most effective form of this would be a charcoal filter. Utilizing rocks, fine gravel, sand, and charcoal, you build it in layers to not only remove fine particles and dissolved contaminants from the water, but also removes contaminants that would otherwise remain as they are absorbed and or neutralized by the charcoal. Now, the charcoal filter does require certain materials and can be difficult to maintain, so a simpler filtering system would be a solar still. Such a diverse concept, it can be made in countless different ways, as long as it has 4 basic elements. The first is a reservoir to contain the contaminated fluid. It should be sealed enough to contain evaporation. The second element is a lid or top with some form of curvature to gather the condensation. Third is a catch to collect the condensation well above the max level of the reservoir. Finally, some way to retrieve the fresh water in the catch without coming in contact with any of the fluid in the reservoir. As the name suggests, this only requires the heat of the sun to operate, but depending on the materials used to build the still, any heat source can be used. I will warn at this time, if using a heat source other than the sun, different contaminants evaporate at different temperatures, and the more heat you apply may add more contaminants to the final product. A simple example of a solar still is one that can be made in a survival situation, and all it requires is a piece of plastic and something to catch the water. Both the bigger the better. First, you need to dig a hole in the ground able to be covered by your plastic and deep enough for your catch. Then, fill it with any moisture you can find, even if you put in fresh plant matter, contaminated water, or even urinate into the hole, and as it is absorbed into the soil, the wet soil will still evaporate fresh moisture. Once the hole is prepared and thoroughly moistened, you need to place a cup or other catch basin within the hole. If there is standing water, you will need to use a rock or something else to stand the cup totally above the water surface. Finally, cover the pit with the tarp and place stones or sand around the edge to hold it in place and seal the evaporation in. Then, place a final stone on top of the tarp right above the catch basin to create a dimple for the condensation to collect at the drip into the catch basin. Unfortunately, neither the solar still or the charcoal filter can remove all contaminants. Even if you put them in series, there are some chemicals in highly industrialized areas that would still remain in the water after going through both filters. So, as always, let me hear you say it with me now. Do your research. Find out what contaminants there are in your water that you are concerned about and research the most effective way to remove said contaminants. Once you have your filtration system in place, you will be able to get as much water as you want, and depending on the type of filter, you may not even need to pay to clean and replace your filter.